I came to America at 27 with nothing but empty hands and a small suitcase I borrowed from my aunt. Back then, I barely understood anything beyond a few English words I picked up at a language center in Saigon. Hello, thank you, how much? I was both overwhelmed and scared. But there was one thing I knew for sure in my heart. I didn't come here to live an easy life. I came to change my life. My first job was washing customers' feet and hands at a small nail salon in San Jose. The pay was minimal, just enough to cover my room rent and buy some cheap groceries at the Asian market on weekends. In those early days, I came home with an aching back, cracked hands from soaking in water all day, and my pride chipped away every time a customer complained about uneven polish. But I didn't cry. I didn't complain. Every night after work, I opened my notebook to study more English. I believed that if I worked hard, I'd eventually move up. 3 years later, I could do every service, manicure, pedicure, waxing. I saved every penny, said no to going out, said no to nice clothes, just to save money. There were times I asked myself what I was living for, when every day was just head down, working and going home to eat instant noodles. But then I'd think of my mother in Vietnam, and my father's words before I left. You're going, and I don't expect you to become rich, I just hope you live a life of value. That's when I started dreaming of a small nail salon of my own. Not to get rich, but to own my time, to take control of my life. No longer depending on salon owners or unreasonable customers. I just wanted a little place, enough to stand strong in this vast American land. Every time I held a small tip in my hand, I pictured a sign with my name on it. And I made a promise. One day, Linda Nails would be real. Those were the days I lived on faith, on hunger, and on quiet sacrifices no one ever saw. I didn't know what the future held. I just knew I was doing everything I could not to waste my life in a foreign land. At 38, after more than a decade of saving, hustling, and scraping by, I signed my first lease for a storefront. A tiny corner in an old Vietnamese plaza on Tully Road in San Jose. No one thought it was a good place to open a salon, but to me, it was my dream taking shape. I named it Linda Nails, my American name, familiar yet strong. I bought each old pedicure chair myself, painted the walls, installed the sign, and applied for all the permits. In the beginning, I did everything alone. I greeted customers, cleaned up, ordered supplies, and cooked rice to bring for lunch to save money. Some days I was so exhausted my hands shook, and I dropped a bottle of polish, but I was still happy because it fell in my salon. I never went to business school. I knew nothing about marketing. But I had something I believed mattered most: heart. I remembered every customer's name. I knew who liked deep red, who wanted classic square nails. I always asked about their families, listened to their stories, and kept the salon as clean and neat as my own home. Customers slowly grew. After a year, I could hire 2 assistants, then 3, then 5. Every time someone called me boss lady, I smiled because I knew exactly what those 2 words cost. Years of bowing my head, cracked hands, and dreams packed into a cold lunchbox eaten at 3 p.m. Once, an American customer asked me, "Linda, how come you work so much and never take a day off?" I just smiled. I didn't know how to explain that I wasn't working for money. I was afraid of losing what I'd spent my whole life building. Even when the salon turned a profit, I lived very simply. I didn't travel, didn't buy a fancy car, didn't get health insurance. I thought, I'm still young, still healthy, insurance is a waste. Better to save cash in case something happens. I believed I was sacrificing for the future. The salon was mine. I could work until I was 70 if I had to. As long as I still had customers and these hands, I'd be okay. I believed that. For 20 years. I worked nearly every single day for 15 years straight. Monday through Sunday, the salon opened at 9 a.m., but I arrived at 7:30 to clean and prepare. After the last customer left at 7 p.m., I stayed another hour to tidy up, do the books, and confirm the next day's appointments. I lived like a clock, precise, persistent, and quiet. No one forced me to work like that. But I told myself, it's my salon, if I don't do it, who will? When people told me, Linda, why don't you take a few days off? Or buy insurance for peace of mind? I just laughed. I always said, I'm healthy, not sick. I'll deal with it later when I have time. But that later never came. I didn't dare travel. Every time I thought about buying a plane ticket to visit my mother in Vietnam, I'd worry, what if my regulars come and I'm not there? What if they leave? I didn't eat out. Didn't spend much. Still drove an old car. Brought lunch from home every day. Every dollar I spent felt like a piece of my old age slipping away. I didn't invest, didn't buy life insurance, didn't contribute to retirement. I thought, cash at home is safest. That mindset followed me from Vietnam, where hospitals asked for payment before treating you, and insurance was a luxury. In America, I lived by that same instinct to save, believing that if I just worked hard enough, I wouldn't need to rely on anyone. There were times I lay completely drained in the break room after 10 hours of nonstop work. My head spinning, vision blurry, but I didn't go to the doctor. I was afraid of the bill. Afraid to lose money. I thought, missing one day costs me hundreds, it's not worth it. I called it sacrifice. I once proudly told my son, I gave up everything for myself for over 10 years, just so you could finish college. But now, looking back, maybe I misunderstood what sacrifice really means. Sacrifice shouldn't mean erasing yourself. It shouldn't mean denying your right to rest, to medical care, to safety. I lived like I was never allowed to get sick. But the human body isn't built to endure forever. And one day, it spoke up, without warning, without mercy, to remind me, I am just a woman. A flesh and blood woman. A woman who once thought sacrifice was strength, but didn't realize that forgetting yourself is the most painful kind of sacrifice. I remember that morning so clearly. It was a quiet Wednesday in the middle of March. The San Jose sun was soft, as usual, and I had just turned on the open sign when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It wasn't the kind of pain you shake off with a deep breath. It was a crushing pressure in the center of my chest, radiating down my left arm like someone was squeezing me from the inside. I had to drop into a chair, my hands trembling so badly I couldn't even hold a bottle of polish. Cold sweat broke out down my neck. I used to be tired. But I was never afraid. I tried to take deep breaths, took a sip of water, and told myself, it's probably just from not sleeping well these past few days. But the pain wouldn't go away. It stayed there, like a slow, steady knock on the door of life, cold, rhythmic, unrelenting. It wouldn't let me escape. I didn't call 911. I didn't go to the hospital. Instead, I called my lead technician at the salon and lied, saying I had to rush home for a family emergency. Then I drove myself back, gripping the steering wheel tightly, gritting through each curve in the road like it might be my last. When I got home, I collapsed into bed. All I could think was, I can't afford to get sick. I can't go to the hospital. How would I pay for it? I lived like that for a whole week, running from the pain with over-the-counter meds from CVS, hot soup, and a foolish hope that this will pass. Then came Saturday night. The pain returned, worse this time. It crushed my chest so hard I could barely breathe. My son, who had come by to visit, took one look at my pale face and panicked. He called an ambulance. In the back of that ambulance, I lay there in silence, clutching the white blanket with both hands. I didn't feel ashamed anymore. I just felt exhausted. In the ER, the doctor said I had myocardial ischemia. They wanted to admit me for further testing. But all I could hear was one word: insurance. I shook my head. I refused to be admitted. The doctor was stunned. My son was furious. And me, I was terrified in a way I'd never felt in my entire life. Not scared of dying, but scared of the bill. Scared of losing everything I'd spent a lifetime saving. In that moment, I realized there is nothing more painful than spending your whole life taking care of others, only to discover that when you need help, there's nothing left to take care of yourself. The physical pain was one thing, but the deeper pain, the true ache was disillusionment. The painful realization that I hadn't prepared for old age simply because I'd always thought I was still young. I didn't get admitted that day. I signed a waiver taking full responsibility and left under the helpless gaze of the doctor and the tearful silence of my son. He didn't say a word, just quietly drove me home. I turned to face the window, unable to meet his eyes. I knew I had just done what no mother should ever do, placed a burden on her child's shoulders. Back home, I lay in bed. The tightness in my chest was still there, but what hurt even more was the question. If I can't afford to see a doctor, do I still deserve to live? For the first time in my life, I called a private health insurance company. They asked my age, my income, and then gave me a quote, over $1,000 a month for the most basic plan, because I was over 60 and had no prior insurance history. I went numb. What nail salon makes enough to pay that kind of premium every month, let alone cover medications and tests? I tried applying for government assistance. I was denied because last year my salon's revenue was still average. But they didn't know that was gross income, not what I actually kept after rent, salaries, supplies, and taxes. They didn't see the nights I lay curled up, trembling with worry, and still paid my staff on time. I started avoiding mirrors. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me with her wild gray hair, dull skin, and sunken eyes. I couldn't talk to anyone, not friends, not employees, definitely not customers. I kept showing up to work, kept smiling, kept asking, would you like pink or nude? But my hands were shaking, and I couldn't hide it forever. One day, while doing a manicure, I had to excuse myself to the break room. The pain had returned. This time it lasted nearly 30 minutes. After the customer left, I collapsed on the floor of the bathroom, clutching my chest, and cried. I didn't cry just because it hurt. I cried because I was ashamed. I was the salon owner, the woman people admired for being so successful. I was the one who sent money back home to relatives, donated to the church, and put my son through college. And yet, here I was, unable to afford proper medical care. Old age doesn't make an appointment. And I had made no preparations. I lived like I was invincible, like everything could be handled if I just pushed a little harder. But there are things you can't outwork. Without insurance, without a retirement plan, without a safety net, I was in free fall. And in the middle of the night, while the city slept, I lay in bed listening to my heartbeat, each thump a quiet wake-up call. Linda, you gave up your whole life, for what? I remember one night, sitting in the salon after closing. No lights on, just the faint glow of the sign outside. In my hands was the first medical bill, nearly $4,300 for 3 ER visits, not including the tests. And I knew that was just the beginning. I looked down at the paper. Then I looked at my hands that had worked nonstop for 20 years. They were rough, the fingers thinned, the skin dry and darkened by chemicals. These hands had raised a son, built a business, and now couldn't even hold on to their own future. I started blaming myself. Why didn't I get insurance earlier? Why did I always think cash is king? Why did I believe that hard work alone was enough? I used to be proud of being a practical, forward-thinking woman. But now I saw myself as naive. Naive enough that it hurt. I had lived my whole life for others, for customers, for my son, for my employees, for relatives. But I had never once sat down and asked, Linda, what about you? I lived like a machine, good at serving, good at sacrificing, but never listening to myself. So many times I felt tired, and I brushed it off. So many warnings I ignored, because I was afraid to spend money, afraid that resting means failure. But the truth is, I had failed the moment I believed I didn't deserve protection. Old age doesn't send a notice. Illness doesn't ask permission. And what I once called sacrifice had become a burden. I had let love turn into shackles. I gave everything away until there was nothing left for myself. And I was angry at myself too. Angry for staying silent for so long. Angry that I raised my son to believe hard work is enough, when the truth is, this life demands so much more. It demands knowledge, a system, A plan. I know I'm not alone. Out there, thousands of women are just like me, immigrants, working endlessly, sacrificing until they're completely drained. But few stop long enough to see what I've come to realize today. If you don't know how to love yourself, no one can help you love life again. In the darkness of the nail salon, once the greatest source of my pride, I sat there and, for the first time in my life, admitted a painful truth. I never knew how to love myself. And now, I'm paying the price. After that hospitalization, I was no longer the same Linda. The doctor told me to take a few weeks off, at least until all the cardiac tests were completed. But I only rested for 4 days. Then I went right back to the salon, not because I was pain-free, but because I was afraid of losing clients, afraid of losing income. But my body couldn't take it anymore. Just doing 4 clients a day left me breathless. Some days, right in the middle of a pedicure, I had to ask the client for a short break. They nodded politely, but I could see the worry in their eyes, maybe even wondering, is she okay? I used to be the one who worked the fastest, did the best, and paid the most attention to detail. Now, Mai and Tao, the 2 younger techs, handled most of the clients. The salon still ran, but it wasn't Linda's salon anymore. I started withdrawing, avoiding small talk with customers. When they asked, "How are you doing these days?" I just forced a smile. Oh, same old. I was ashamed. Not because I was sick, but because I couldn't take care of myself. I reapplied for Medi-Cal, and this time I got partial approval because my income had dropped. But I had to make choices. Only go to assigned clinics, only use medications on the approved list. I used to think health insurance was optional. Now it meant survival. I also started selling off things around the house, the massage chair, the dining table I bought when my son still lived with me, even an old gold bracelet my mother left me. No one knew I was doing this. I quietly went to the pawn shop, trading pieces of a lifetime's memories for a few $100s to buy medication and pay off hospital bills. Many nights, I lay awake listening to the hum of the fridge, remembering all the years I didn't spend a dime on myself, always thinking, I'll use it when I retire. But that someday came too fast. And it looked nothing like I imagined. My son wanted me to stop working completely and move in with him and his wife in Fremont. But I refused. I said, I'm still healthy, I can manage. The truth is, I didn't want to become a burden. These hands once raised a child. I didn't want to end my life living off someone else. But inside, I felt empty. No more dreams, no more goals, just one question pulsing in my chest every morning. How did I spend a whole life running a business, yet end up this poor? I didn't change my life in some dramatic way. I didn't quit. I didn't sell the salon. I didn't move. But inside me, something cracked and started to shift. I began with a small notebook from Dollar Tree. I called it my life book. It sounded silly, but to me, it was a promise. Linda, from now on, you must live for yourself too. On the first page, I wrote, each month, save $100 for health. It wasn't much, but I was determined to stick to it. If I could spend $500 a month sending money back home, if I could always buy gifts for my nieces and nephews, then $100 for routine checkups wasn't too much to ask. I also changed the way I ate. I used to eat on-the-go sandwiches, coffee, fried food, because it was quick and convenient. Now I woke up 20 minutes earlier to cook a simple meal: white rice, boiled vegetables, steamed fish. I was learning to enjoy my own meals, not just to fill my stomach, but to stay alive longer. At the salon, I reorganized tasks. Mai helped book appointments. Tao handled the more technical clients. I focused on pedicures, less pressure. I didn't need to push myself. I didn't need to prove I was the best anymore. I also said no for the first time in my life. There was a regular customer who always called last minute, then showed up 30 minutes late. I used to smile and accommodate her. But this time, I gently said, I'm sorry, but I need to prioritize clients who arrive on time. My hands were trembling when I said that. But afterward, I felt lighter. I started learning about Medicare, the program I once thought was only for the poor. Turns out, if you understand the system and make timely contributions, you can still qualify for full coverage after 65. It's not too late. It's just a late start. I spoke with a client who worked in finance. She gave me a little book about managing finances in retirement. I took it home and read every page, crying as I read. Why? Because I wish someone had handed me that book 20 years ago. My life didn't suddenly get easier because of these changes, but they helped me lift my head each morning, instead of lying there thinking, God, I really messed up. I started to believe. Not every mistake can be fixed, but there's still so much I can do, so the rest of my life doesn't have to be another blind sacrifice. I used to think self-care was something only rich people could afford. For women with husbands, for retired ladies with 401(k)s, for people who had money to spare. But me? I was the breadwinner. I was a working-class Vietnamese woman. I took care of others, no one took care of me. But after the illness, after the night I sat crying alone in the salon, I realized no one can survive if they spend a lifetime giving and never keep anything for themselves. I started learning again, like a child, how to love myself. I went to the family doctor through a support program. They gave me heart medication and told me to walk 15 minutes a day. I listened. I didn't argue anymore. Every morning, I put on my old sneakers and walked around the small park near the market. I didn't rush. I didn't count steps. I just walked. At first, my legs hurt. Then I got used to it. And then one day, I realized my heartbeat had slowed down, and my heart felt less angry. I started cutting out the things that exhausted me, those friends who only called to complain, the relatives who kept asking to borrow money. I still cared about them, but I had learned to say, I'm sorry, I just can't afford to help right now. It was hard, but it was also freeing. I reserved the first Saturday of every month to do something just for me. Some days, it was going to the Vietnamese market to buy fresh fruit. Other days, it was buying a new pair of soft slippers. Or, that day, I sat at the corner cafe just to have a cup of hot coffee with milk and watch people pass by. It was the first time I truly smiled in months when my grandson sent me a drawing he made. Grandma is a superhero with a strong heart. I stuck it on the fridge. Every time I look at it, I remember I'm living for myself now and for those who love me, not to prove anything to anyone anymore. I also joined a small group at church, older women like me who spent their whole lives sacrificing for their families, now learning how to slow down. We share stories, swap saving tips, read the Bible. No one brags about their car or house. There's only the warmth in our eyes when we listen to each other speak from the heart. I used to think I was late in life. But now, whenever I sit in the morning sunlight, I remind myself, it's never too late, as long as you're still breathing and still want to live differently. That day was an early autumn Sunday morning. The weather was mild, no harsh sun. I woke up at 6, like always, no alarm needed. It's the habit of someone who's worked in service for years. Morning comes, I get up, even if no one's waiting for me anymore. I made a cup of coffee with milk, drip style, letting it fall slowly like we do back home. In my small, quiet room, there was only the soft whirl of the ceiling fan and the aroma of coffee filling the kitchen. I opened the window and sat on an old plastic chair, looking out at the tiny backyard where I grow a few chili plants, some scallions, and a pot of basil. The leaves rustled in the gentle breeze. In the distance, I could hear kids playing ball. A sparrow landed on the wooden fence, tilted its head at me, then flew away. Nothing special. And yet, for some reason, my nose stung and my eyes welled up. In that moment, I realized something I had never really thought about during all those busy years. Life isn't about what we accumulate, it's about the moments we allow ourselves to pause and feel. There were days I earned $400, $500 in one day, working 10 hours straight, coming home exhausted, slurping instant noodles, and crashing into bed. Back then, I thought I was doing well. But in truth, I was just surviving. I had money, but no time to notice the plant in the yard, to hear the birds, or to savor a cup of coffee from start to finish. Now, I don't earn as much as before, but I have time. I have peace. I have a little late-blooming wisdom. And strangely, I feel grateful. I used to be angry at myself. Angry for the mistakes. Angry for not preparing for old age. But that morning, sitting in the golden calm, I wasn't angry anymore. I thought, maybe, life knocks us down not to punish us, but to make us bow our heads, look back, and choose to live differently. I picked up my little notebook, my life log, and slowly wrote one line. Today, I'm still alive, and I'm starting to learn how to live. There was a time when I lived with a constant obsession over money. If I didn't make $1,200 a week, I couldn't sleep. If I didn't send money home that month, I felt guilty. If I didn't cheat a few $100s on my taxes that year, I felt like I'd lost. In my mind, money wasn't just money, it was survival, honor, family, self-worth. But then, illness came. Old age came. And I realized, there are things money can't buy back, and there are fears more expensive than poverty. I used to fear getting sick, because sickness meant losing income. I used to fear taking time off, because rest meant failure. I used to fear people seeing me as no longer strong, no longer Sister Linda, the successful shop owner. Now, I'm not afraid anymore. Not because I'm rich, but because I no longer measure my life by anyone else's scale. I live with less money, but I have a clear plan. Each month, I set aside a bit for better food for my heart. I pay extra into Medicare based on advice from the senior center. I've learned how to ask for help the right way, without shame. I now understand. Support isn't begging, it's a right for those who've contributed to society all their lives. I've stopped buying those meaningless treats, clothes to prove I'm still young, designer things to save face. Now I dress simply, comfortably. I no longer need anyone to judge me by what I wear. I spend more time talking with my son not to teach him how to save money, but to ask his forgiveness for being too hard on him. I used to pressure him to study, work, save, buy a house, because I was scared he'd end up poor like Mom. But now I simply say, son, don't be like me, don't live your life always afraid of every dollar. I've come to understand, real freedom isn't in how much money you have, it's in not letting money control your emotions. I'm no longer forced to do what I don't want. I no longer endure relationships that drain me. I know how to say no, how to rest, how to say, today I'm tired, I need a break. Some days I only make $50. But I still smile when I lock up the shop because I know I owe no one and I no longer owe myself either. I used to think forgiveness was something you gave to others. I forgave the customer who yelled at me over a chipped nail. Forgave the tenant who paid rent late. Forgave my cousin back in Vietnam who promised to pay me back and never did. I forgave because I didn't want to carry resentment. But I had never forgiven myself. I was angry at me. Angry for being careless. Angry for thinking I didn't need insurance. Angry that after 20 years of running a shop, open 7 days a week, all I had left was a bad back and a heart ultrasound report. One day, I stood in the bathroom, looking in the mirror. I saw a 62-year-old woman, skin darkened by chemicals, calloused hands, graying hair, sunken eyes. I stared for a long time, and I asked myself, was it worth it? Was it worth giving away my youth to nothing but work, 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 only to end up without enough money for a doctor's visit? The first answer was no. No, it wasn't. I should have bought insurance. I should have taken breaks. I should have lived for myself a little. I had enough opportunities. I just kept turning them down in the name of sacrifice. But then I sat down. I looked at an old photo, me, just newly arrived in America, short hair, wearing a worn-out shirt, holding my newborn in a shared apartment. I didn't see a foolish woman. I saw a mother doing everything she could to survive. I remembered those nights working until 10 p.m., washing my hands while trying to squeeze in a quick call to my mother in Vietnam. I remembered working through holidays because the salon was busy, remembered eating instant noodles 3 times a day just to save enough for my child's tuition. It wasn't that I didn't know how to care for myself. It was that, back then, I didn't think I was allowed to. I hugged myself, the woman in the mirror, thinner, older, but still trying. And I whispered softly, "Linda, you did your best. That's enough. Now you have the right to live differently." Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Forgiveness means stopping the self-punishment every time you look back. I started calling it being kind to myself. No one taught me that. No school ever told me that a Vietnamese immigrant woman, whether a business owner or a worker, deserves to rest, to be cared for, to breathe. Now I know. It's late, but not too late. That day was a slow Tuesday. The sky was overcast, not many customers. I sat behind the counter, washing tools and organizing drawers. Probably just a few regulars would show up, some housewives from the neighborhood, or maybe a college girl coming in for a quick pedicure. I was tidying up when the doorbell rang, ting, a familiar sound that still made me straighten my back. She walked in. Around 70, silver hair, wearing a light jacket, her posture tilted slightly to one side. She held a canvas bag that read, "One step at a time." She smiled gently and asked in English, "Is it okay if I just get a simple manicure today?" I invited her to sit. As I started working, I noticed her hands, darkened by time, with thin skin and prominent veins, but her nails were neatly trimmed. I said, "You really take good care of your hands." She smiled and replied, "I used to be a nurse, almost 40 years. I'm retired now, but I still don't want these hands to forget how to care for others." We chatted. I rarely talk about myself, but that day, for some reason, the words just came. Naturally. I told her how I once didn't buy insurance, how I got sick, how I was so scared I cried because I couldn't afford to see a doctor. She listened quietly. No interruptions, no pity. Then she said gently, "I know the feeling. I also spent my whole life not taking care of myself. It wasn't until my husband died, suddenly, that I realized, if you don't stop for yourself, life will stop you." I paused. Something caught in my throat. Not because what she said was grand, but because I felt seen. Not as the successful Vietnamese nail salon owner. Not as the poor woman who didn't buy insurance. But as a woman who had tried to live, had made mistakes, had lost things, and was now trying to find peace again. When I finished her nails, she stood up, paid, and slipped me a small piece of paper. I opened it. Not a tip. Just a card, handwritten in old, careful script. "You did good. Your life is not a mistake. It's a lesson full of strength. Keep going." I couldn't hold back my tears. I placed that card on the shelf, under the desk lamp, a daily reminder. Turns out, in this little salon, among bottles of red polish and clippings of nail trimmings, there was still room for softness, for small flickers of hope strong enough to shake a heart that had gone dry. That night, after closing the salon, I got home late. Dinner was just a bowl of congee I reheated from the night before. I turned on my phone, thinking about checking a few sale notifications, when I saw a missed call. The name read, "David, my son." I hesitated. We didn't talk often. Not because we hated each other. Just distance. Unspoken, but understood. He had been angry at me once. As a kid, he always saw me busy with the salon, with customers, with wiring money back home. I didn't go to parent-teacher meetings. I missed too many of his birthdays. I never asked what he liked or needed. I just said, "You have to try your best. I'm already working so hard. Don't make me worry more." And he grew silent. I called him back. After 3 rings, David picked up. "Mom?" His voice deep, familiar, but distant. I felt a lump in my throat, but I tried to sound normal. "Yeah, it's me. You called earlier. What's up?" "Nothing big. I just wanted to ask if you're okay. Auntie said you weren't feeling well last week." I was surprised. He still checked on me? I thought he didn't care anymore. I'm feeling better now. I took my meds, followed up with the doctor. Did you go on time? Or did you just tough it out again? I chuckled softly. This time I got scared. Didn't dare be stubborn. There was a short pause. Then David said, in a low voice, I know things were hard for you. But I was hurt too. I just needed you to be there. It felt like someone gently knocked on my chest from the inside. I know. And I'm sorry. I thought making money meant I was taking care of you. But I didn't understand. It's okay. I just want you to be healthy. If something's wrong, tell me. Don't keep it to yourself. I will. I promise. Then he said something that stopped me cold. We're thinking about buying a new house. There's a spare room. If you ever feel too tired, you can come stay with us. I broke down in tears. I never needed my son's money. I never asked for that. But those words, a simple invitation to come back, not as a burden, but as a part of his life, were worth more than any insurance policy. I sat still on the sofa, phone still in hand. The warm yellow light cast shadows on a corner of the wall full of old photographs. One showed me holding David when he was 3. He was laughing, carefree, full of hope. Back then, all I saw in the future was money. Now, I understand. The future is family. I can't remember the last time I wrote down what I wanted. Not a job application. Not a budget spreadsheet. Not revenue goals or plans to add more chairs in the salon. But writing down what my heart truly longs for. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I didn't open the salon. It had rained hard the night before, and the morning air was cold and unusually fresh. I made a cup of ginger tea and pulled out an old notebook from the drawer, the one I used to log customer appointments. I flipped to a blank page and wrote the first line. What do I want for the rest of my life? My hand trembled, not from illness, but because I had never allowed myself to ask that question. All my life, I only asked, what can I do to make money? How do I survive? How do I keep people from looking down on me? But now, it's different. I wrote, I want to walk for 15 minutes every morning without rushing. I want to reread the Vietnamese books my mother sent me to remember where I come from. I want to learn to cook a few heart-healthy dishes, not restaurant quality, just warm and comforting. I want to play with my grandchild, if my son ever has one, and not feel like a burden. I want to call an old friend on weekends, catch up, laugh a little. I want to live slowly. No more jumping up in the middle of a meal just because a customer calls. No more guilt over taking a single day off. And I added, I want to forgive my younger self, the woman who did her best, even if not always in the right way. I looked at those lines. Tears came, but they weren't from sadness. For the first time in years, I felt like a person, not a worker, not an immigrant barely scraping by, not Linda, the salon owner who has to hold everything together. Just Linda, a 62-year-old woman who's been tired, who's made mistakes, who got back up, and who now wants to live true to herself. I closed the notebook and placed it next to my tea. Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin ray of sunlight streamed through the window, faint, but warm enough. I knew I would still go to work tomorrow. But now I had a different list, a list of the things that make me feel alive. And for the first time, I believed. I deserve that. If you are an immigrant woman like me, someone who came to America with empty hands, broken English, sharing a rented room, who once swore her children would never go without. I wrote this for you. I know you are strong. I used to be strong like you. You work 10-hour days, 7 days a week, only resting when your body literally can't stand. You set aside your dreams of studying, gave up your love for sewing, for flower arranging, even for afternoon naps. You send money home, care for your parents, your siblings, and then care for your children here. You call it sacrifice. I understand. I once wore that word like a badge of honor. But now, at 62, sitting in a cardiology clinic without insurance, I just feel like I made the wrong trade. I'm not saying don't sacrifice. I'm only asking, don't forget yourself. Whether you're a business owner or an employee, whether you've been here 20 years or just 2 months, please remember, you deserve to have insurance. You deserve timely checkups, rest, a retirement fund, and a Sunday just to breathe. I know we're used to being frugal. We say, I don't need anything. But the one who needs you healthy is your family. If you haven't gotten insurance, start researching today. If you've been putting off a doctor's visit, don't wait until your body is screaming in pain. If you're thinking, I'm still healthy, understand this. The real cost of illness isn't just money. It's fear, loneliness, and regret. I'm not writing this to complain. I'm writing in hopes that someone, somewhere, will pause and choose a different path. Don't let today's sacrifice become tomorrow's anxiety. Don't let hard work kill your future. And don't believe that love must mean suffering. Love also means saving a little for yourself. You're not selfish. You're just learning how to live more fully. And if you ever need someone to talk to, just know, somewhere out there, there's someone like me, listening.